This meeting will convene. Please, would you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is anyone here from the public who wishes to comment on an item not on the agenda?
Greetings. My name is Pete Bennett. I'm here again. I'm hoping that people here will start to recognize the gravity of my situation. For those in the audience, if you want to understand part of my story, go to hashtag PGE Witness and look at the man leaving the explosion that blew up the pipeline, which is this picture right here. Today I'm going to leave you something. On this document I'm going to give you, that I hope you all photocopy before you go home, is a guy walking out of the PG&E explosion with 2 gas cans. I'm a software engineer from PG&E. I'm the one that triggered the indictment. I know all about the explosion. I didn't want to be part of the explosion. I was dragged into it. That's the beginning of what I'm going to give you. Now, this is a Walnut Creek event, but you don't know that. This is about limos and traffic and fires and arson and exploding limos and people being burned alive on freeways. People that I know in some cases. That's me playing with the raging grannies at the Occupy Federal Reserve. That happens to be the same raging grannies in the Walnut Creek limo fire. Yes, Luella, those are my friends. So I'm going to start generating some reports. They're going to start looking a little bit like this. And you're going to see things coming like this from me very soon. I would ask that somebody would just send me all of your emails in one group. It would be great. I started analyzing explosions because my F-250 blew up on the freeway 13 years ago, and there are commissioners here that are on this board that know about that have covered it up. I was almost burned alive. I have an F-250 with 7-quart engine. Somebody put a rack seal in and drained my oil, and I lit up like a fireball. Visible from the Danville Police Department. Why do you think I have so much angst with the Danville Police Department? The same chief that was involved in the death of Robert Smith, who I know too, is the same chief in Danville. Conspiracy 101. I started analyzing this. I circulated a document with the U.S. Attorney and the FBI called the Plaintiff's Winner's Circle. That's because your attorneys that are involved have a lot to do with what's really truly going on. I can't get an attorney because my attorney was beaten up down the street. His offices were burned down. Another one burned down. I have 2 attorneys with murders in their family. I've lost millions, and I have a witness murdered in 1989, and I'm going to hold the feet to the fire because City Attorney Mark Kuhn was working on that, and he jumped to his death. My story's weird. Now, the other part about it is here, I've been on the phone to the Transportation Committee about a lot of these issues long before I discovered you guys are sitting on the commission. I've asked for police reports for decades. Mark DeSaulnier has known me for 38 years. And if I had gotten Mark's help 15, 18 years ago when I first asked him, my family in Salt Lake City would be still alive. This is what happens to my friends in Danville. Their arms get cut up and bloodied. Their houses get burned down.
Time's up. Thank you. Thank you.
Isn't that great? How much you care about people?
Thank you.
Yeah, and this one here is another arson right across the street from my
Time's
house.
up, Mr. Bennett.
Mr. Bennett,
Please.
it's not going to be over, sir.
Just send me all that stuff. I'll be happy to look at it, okay?
And never respond.
Okay, thanks.
That's what you do. Everybody does that. The system's broken, and I've lost people, human beings. Take note of what I'm saying.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Okay, next item is a commendation. So would Commissioner Hudson come forward, please?
Look what I got. Thanks. Thanks, Tom. Surprise.
It's what we have
Thanks,
on behalf of a grateful
Get that photograph.
on behalf of a grateful Transportation Commission.
This is really neat. Who's the guy in the picture?
On behalf of the Grateful Transportation Commission, I'm proud to present this display to Chairman Hudson, and I want to read the commendation that goes along with it. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority commends David Hudson for dedicated service to the authority as chair from February 2016 through February 2017. David Hudson led the authority with enthusiasm, respect, and diplomacy, and contributed to a noteworthy year, which included numerous project groundbreaking and ribbon-cutting events, including the completion of Highway 4, launching shared autonomous vehicles, and being a tireless advocate for CCTA in Washington, D.C. It is with gratitude that we recognize Dave Hudson's leadership as chair and steadfast commitment to the delivery of Contra Costa programs and projects. Presented with appreciation this day, March 15th, 2017.
Who snuck on that Dodger pin? Thank
That
you.
goes with it, too.
Okay.
All right.
I promise to not take more than a half an hour. Ever since I was a young whipper, tromping through the snow 10 miles to school, this has been an enjoyable year. I could thank a lot of people, but this is not the Academy Awards. But in particular, I would like to point out that Tom did make many of the meetings for me when you can't be in two places at once. And who could say enough about what Don did this year? I mean, that transportation expenditure plan was something special. I hope we can stay with it because, in my opinion, the work is not done. And thank you all for being so cooperative on those 5 and 10 minute meetings so we could dump the 5-hour meeting on Don. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I just had one question for Mr. Hudson. Did I hear you say you were trumping through the snow? Is that what I heard you say?
Better than the days when I ran through it, but that's a different story.
You said trumping through the snow. I was wondering about the trumping through the snow and what that meant.
Okay, let's start early. We're not.
Okay, next item, approval of minutes. Do we have a motion?
Move approval. Second.
Okay, Commissioner Romick and Commissioner Newell, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
One abstention.
We have one abstention. Next item is the consent calendar. Does anybody want to take anything off the consent calendar? We have
Mr. Chairman, I would
Yes.
like to remove item 2.8A.
2A,
Item 2A8, excuse me,
2A8.
for the purposes of, I want to abstain from approval of that item,
Okay, I think you can just do that.
well, as long as that's
We
clear.
can approve it and show you as abstaining.
Thank you, that's fine.
We can do two motions, one to approve the consent calendar and one to approve item
Do
A.
it separately, okay. All right, we'll make it a separate item. Okay, we have a motion by Mitchoff and a second by Hudson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we will now go to item,
Now we need to move to a.
that's what I'm doing. We'll move to 2A8. You know, in my city council, if you take something off the consent calendar, it goes to the back of the agenda, which I think is a really great idea. But we're more progressive here, so we'll take 2A8 right now, and I don't, since you know what you, okay, so there's a motion by Hudson, second by Romick to approve 2A8. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Abstentions?
Abstaining.
One abstention by Trotter. Okay. The next item is item 4, under regular agenda items, item 4A, 19, 4A19, approval of fiscal year 2016-2017 mid-year budget for the Contra Costa Transportation Authority and Congestion Management Agency.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Tonight, we're going to go over the proposed mid-year 2016-17 budget. We're trying to get the display to work.
She needs a drink so she can swallow right.
Look at that. Thank you. In your packet, in the staff report, it tries to go through and in detail discuss all of the items. There's an 8 slides in here that'll go over the individual, some individual details that'll go into a little bit of information for all of you to see the changes that we have here. So in the left-hand column, you'll see the fiscal year 2017, and the center column would be the mid-year fiscal year 2017. That would be the budget that we're proposing based off of the changes of meeting with the staff members. The right-hand column would be the change. As we look at this, we have our sources on top, which is our revenues, and the uses, which are the expenditures below. The biggest component in there is the sales tax revenues. We're leaving that flat at $84.8 million. In order to increase the budget, we need to see something substantial in the first 6 months of activity. And we have a slide on the sales tax data for 6 months later on, but we're looking at only about a 2.5% increase over the prior fiscal year. And our budget is about 1.7% higher than where we were last year. So depending on what growth we have in the rest of the year, we may come in a little higher than the sales tax revenues. We never like to make many changes unless there's really good data to change it at mid-year, because a lot of our programs establish limits, and we send those the dollar amounts out to the cities, and we don't want the cities to make budget amendments thinking they're going to get more money and have a downturn later on in the year and not be able to fulfill our obligations. We have federal, state, and local revenues, which are grants that we go out and seek to complete projects and programs. Investment on our funds in-house. We have bond proceeds. We go out and we issue the bonds in advance to start the CIP projects, and as the projects have expenditures, if they are identified as Measure J funded for certain categories, we will use those bond proceeds to reimburse ourselves for those individual items. The project section was $116 million. We've reduced it down to $93 million, which is a $23 million reduction. A lot of that has to do with the timing of construction, and sometimes in prior fiscal years we were able to get more done depending on weather or depending on environmental, or there's many changes with the CIP projects. The programs and planning and admin sections usually stay about the same. They're allocations based off of revenue that we receive in the sales tax. In the administrative section, you can see it went up $1.3 million. We had the Measure X ballot measure last year. We finally got the bill from the county, and that's going to be $1.241 million in there. And then we have the debt service that's increasing $1.5 million. On the consent calendar tonight, we approved the potential to go out and issue some bonds in May of 2017. It's just a reimbursement resolution. So should we have some expenditures that exceed what we have already in bond proceeds, we need to have that resolution there so that we can go back and pay back the Measure J funds for those projects. Here's just a quick look at the last few years of the sales tax revenue. You can see we had some strong growth in 2012, 13, and it started to increase again in 15 and 16. And as I said earlier, we only need about 1.7% to get to the budget amount of $84.9 million. At the APC, I had a schedule that I handed out that only showed about the first 3 months of the fiscal year. Just last week, we got the information so that we could now compile 6 months of information. The second quarter showed about 3.2% increase. The first quarter was about 1.7% increase. So you can see, so year to date for the mid-year budget, we're up 2.5%. Gas is starting to level out. We've had some strong decreases over the years because of the sales tax we receive on gas prices. We continue to show some really strong growth in the retail, new auto, and restaurant areas in the middle. And those make up a large portion of our revenue there. You can see they're about 12, 20, and 13%. This slide here shows some historical data on how much money we received in sales tax, and we've also added in federal, state, and local revenue, which helps build all the projects and programs that we have in there. And you can understand how important it is to get all the outside money to complete the CIP projects. On the funding side, the capital project revenues increased $7.4 million to $37.9 million. As we go through the funding sources, the RM2 went up about $1.6 million. Some of that is to do with the Caldecott Tunnel. We finally got some expenditures related to that into the authority, and we're just collecting on that. All of the funding sources up there is probably 95%. We have to expend the funnies to get reimbursed, and the timing on that could sometimes take different fiscal years, so it can be a little hard to budget on that side. On the other category, which is the bottom one down there, you can see it was an increase of about $3.6 million. The authority just recently sold some excess land that we had along the Highway 4 section. That brought in about $3.4 million. The ECRFA funds in there is an increase of $2.1 million, and that's related to the Balfour project, related to the utility relocation. This slide here tries to go through and show the capital projects from Caldecott all the way down to the Richmond Parkway, and this allocates all the additional $37 million that we receive, and it shows where it goes for each of the individual projects. The far right-hand side is the bond proceeds and MSJ programs. So if we don't have external funding for those projects, it's funded by the Measure J projects. So as we look at the Caldecott Tunnel, we're expecting to see about $5.3 million in expenditures, $2.7 in RM2 funding, and that leaves about $2.6 million that will be funded by Measure J. We will use the bond proceeds to fund that, and if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, we look to spend about $4.2 million in bond proceeds that we received on the 2015 or the 2015 bonds. We have sufficient resources to pay for that. This table here shows the other sources. It takes the Measure J sales tax distribution by use. We look at the expenditure plan, and it breaks it all down. For every dollar we receive, capital projects gets about 42.5%. Our return to source on local streets and maintenance is about 20%. We look at bus service, 8.3%. And as you look at that, that's how it's all allocated to the individual projects and programs. We also have the external revenues, which is going to be your bond proceeds and your grants and local revenue. And then we have our expenditures that we allocate for each of these projects through the year. And the negative $11.7 million is the use of prior year funding that we've received for these earmarked projects. Also on the Measure J or Measure C side, we have about $6 million in revenues and about $7.2 million in expenditures. In that $6 million of revenues, there was $5.8 million that came from the Tri-Valley Transit District funding program. And here we look at the changes in the individual projects. The proposed expenditures is $210 million roughly. And the capital projects here, some of the ones that stick out is CIP2, which is the BART Contra Costa rail extension. You can see there's a decrease of about $5.9 million. And the change in there is related to finishing some of the construction and some of the expenditures in the prior year. So therefore, there was a need to reduce it from $17 million to $11 million this year. As we look at CIP Project 5, we have the SR4 bypass elements on the Balfour contract. We had originally budgeted, when we brought the budget to you last June, we were expecting to spend about $30 million in that category. The Balfour project, with the utility relocation and the extra rain that we've had, has slowed down progress out there just a teeny bit. So you can see that we've decreased it about $6.3 million. And with the other projects in there, there was some timing. That reduced the budgets in there as well. On the BART improvements at the bottom, we had the Del Norte BART modernization. We were able to, that was postponed to next fiscal year, so that was a decrease there. So as we get into some of the details besides the capital projects and the revenues, we always like to talk about administration, because administration is a very small component and it does fall under the 1% category. The salaries and benefits are budgeted to be $0.7 million, and that represents 0.8% of the 1% limitation in there. So we're below the limitation of 1% that's set by the strategic plan. As I discussed earlier, there is an increase of about $1.25 million related to the Measure X ballot measure. The authority's pension and post-employment rates, there was no increase in this fiscal year. Our program saw a decrease of about $1.1 million. We took a look at all the open contracts and all the status updates on a lot of the different programs that we had in there, and we were able to reduce the budget by about $1.1 million. With the program section, it's always fixed on the revenue that we receive, and even though we open these contracts with a lot of the different agencies, they don't get our expenditures in until sometimes the next fiscal year. The planning department, we saw a decrease of about $600,000. The expenditure decrease is due to the completion of the public outreach that was done, I believe it was August of last fiscal year, or August of 2016. Expenditures related to the priority development areas decreased about $340,000. On the revenue side in planning, we received so far year-to-date $1.6 million for that program. Several contracts and studies are partially funded by grant revenues. The debt service we discussed, an increase of about $1.5 million for the bonds. Should the bonds issue in May, there will be debt service associated with that in June, so therefore we budgeted $1.5 million there. And we plan to draw down about $41.2 million on the bonds. In conclusion, this wraps up our presentation on the mid-year budget adjustments.
Commissioner Trotter, did you have? No.
I just want to say thank you. I think you guys are doing an outstanding job, 5 years in a row for accounting reporting awards. I think what this agency does better than most is that the accuracy and the detail and the depth that we go into, really from finance, you and Randy and your whole team, to give our project managers and program managers accurate and current and rapid response information makes us an agency of choice, as our executive director says all the time. But I think it's because of our finances that it's really done exceptionally well, and proud to be part of this organization, because we can't say that. We don't have any unfunded liabilities. We're forward-thinking, which is a breath of fresh air. So with that, I'd be honored to move this for mid-year adjustment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Arnrich, second by Pierce, to approve Resolution 16.32A, Revision 1, changes to the fiscal year 2016-2017 budget. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, next item, 4.A.21, adoption of Ordinance 17-01 to amend the Contra Costa Transportation Authority's Administrative Code, Chapter 1, Article 4, Section 104.6C.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Staff seeks adoption of Ordinance 17-01, approving the proposed revisions to the Authorities Administrative Code, Chapter 1, Article 4, Section 104.6C, which discusses the powers of an ex officio representative. The proposed revisions would allow an ex officio representative to also serve as an alternate commissioner, providing that they do not serve in both positions at any given meeting. If an ex officio serves as the commissioner alternate, they would make arrangements for their alternate to serve at that meeting as the ex officio. The ex officio would only have the rights or powers of a commissioner when they are serving in the capacity of an alternate. The proposed revisions would allow the authority, as well as the ex officio representatives, to represent the authority on other transportation-related boards. These revisions are being brought forward to ensure that we have regional representation on the board. Now that we have two ex officios serving from the same regional transportation planning committee, it limits their options for appointing members that adequately represent the region. They have their 6 members, 4 of them, 2 of them are commissioners and 2 are representatives, and the other 2 are alternates, one of which is a Board of Supervisor alternate as well. And then we have other regions with, 6 members, which 5 are appointed to this board in some capacity. And so this would allow more flexibility. I've also received several calls and emails from the regional transportation planning committees asking if they can appoint alternates and finding different ways to appoint alternates for this board. In addition, we recently had quorum issues at our January meeting and had 6 members. So this revision would allow us the flexibility to meet our quorum requirements as well as ensure that we have regional representation around the county. So due to these multiple issues arising, this is why this item is being brought forward. We have really engaged and active board members, which I'd like to commend and thank you for. You rarely miss meetings, so this would really only be on a rare occasion when the ex officio would have to serve as an alternate. So this concludes my presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Commissioner?
I appreciate the proactive work. I guess I'm sort of stunned. I mean, I've been on this board 6 years, and the January meeting, I think, was the only time we didn't have a quorum, so I guess I'm a little confused. We each have an alternate, so now there'll be an ex officio to, like, my seat, I have an alternate. So
Now, it would allow an ex officio to be appointed by the Regional Transportation Planning Committee to serve as either. They would be the ex officio. They would only fill in the capacity of an alternate when that commissioner could not attend a meeting.
So RTPC has 2 representatives. So there's 2 alternates, correct? So the ex officio would be it's if the 2 represent.
No.
Yeah, I missed.
The ex officios are the representative of the bus companies.
Oh, I see. I'm
and
sorry.
The MTC rep and the BART rep.
Oh, that's all we're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
And because this year in particular,
Amy and Dave are
well,
friends.
Amy can never be an alternate from SWAT,
I
from La
see.
Miranda.
Oh, I got you.
And now because Don has been appointed to be the bus company rep as the ex officio representative, he can't be an alternate for a SWAT member either.
I
And
gotcha.
because of the way SWAT is divided up into 2 sections, they each only have 3 people to
Thank
start
you.
with. And we actually have some of those complications in some of our other regions as well. It just happened that it was a perfect storm in the
I
January one in the literal sense. Because
We call this
poor
the
Newell would have
taxi
made
rule.
it, yes.
Okay, I'm
But
so sorry. I just wasn't
that's
following.
the issue.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, did you have
Thank you
anything
for
else?
explaining.
I would move the item.
Second.
Okay, motion by Pierce, second by Romick. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, so that brings us down to item 4B4, 2017 Countywide Transportation Plan Work Status Update.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning at CCTA. and I'm here this evening to speak with you about the 2017 update to the countywide transportation plan. This item was discussed at the planning committee, so if any of the planning committee members would like to chime in, feel free. The Measure J Transportation Improvement Program requires that the Contra Costa Transportation Authority develop and periodically update a comprehensive countywide transportation plan. And we've done 4 of them. We did one in 95, one in 2000, one in 2004, and the last update was 2009. We started an update to the 2009 plan back in 2012, you may recall, and we issued a draft in the summer of 2014. That draft was not adopted as we got so many public comments during the fall. Following release of that draft, we want to take more time to incorporate those comments. And then during 2015, we geared up again for a 2015 draft CTP, and that plan was delayed as we tried to look at the implications of Senate Bill 743. Senate Bill 743 has made our lives a little bit more complex in that our countywide plan is based on action plans for routes of regional significance, and those action plans include objectives that SB 743 would essentially make invalid for use in an environmental document. So you all serve on your regional transportation planning committees, and you've worked on action plans for routes of regional significance. Those action plans were actually adopted by each RTPC back in 2014, and they're ready to go, except for this issue of SB 743. So back in December of last year, I presented a work plan to you that said we can do this 2017 CTP during calendar year 2017, which means we can get this thing finished by December 2017, and we could do a comprehensive update of the action plans in accordance with SB 743, and we could actually incorporate MTC's new forecasts, which are going to come out as part of their 2017 RTP. So that was the story back in December. Now, here are some of the complicating factors. First of all, we went out to the regional transportation planning committees. We talked to each of the TACs, and we said, how would you like to update your action plans and get rid of level of service, get rid of delay, and use this new measurement required under SB 743 that would involve vehicle miles traveled? And they said, well, we'd like to explore that. Some were interested, some were not. But they started asking us for some kind of interim guideline on how this would all work, and they started asking for examples of how we could implement SB 743. And we said, great, we can start to work on that. But then we realized we really don't have guidance from Sacramento on how to do this. And the guidance that the Office of Planning and Research developed, it's got some examples in there for how to do these new calculations using vehicle miles traveled. But it's not final, and it's not going to be adopted until probably 2 years from now, after it goes through some additional steps of review. And we've noticed at the state level, when the California Transportation Commission saw interim guidelines developed by Caltrans, that those were not very well received by the CTC, and they're very concerned now about eliminating level of service across the board, which is what SB 743 proposes. And so if we go out there and start issuing interim policies, we may get into the same issue of we're trying to second guess what's going to happen in Sacramento. So the action plan update, to align that with 743, it would take a lot more time, and actually we really can't do it properly until we know exactly what the new guidelines are. With regard to updating all the forecasts, we have a countywide model, and we look at the year 2040, and we try to update the forecasts and say, what will the world look like in 2040? It's a 30-year forecast from 2010 to 2040. Our existing data is based upon projections 2013, which was incorporated into the 2013 RTP and was adopted by ABAG in February 2014. It's called Projections 2013. We have all of that data, and we've already done most of the work using all of that data. Our plan that we gave you back in December said we can update that. We can do it based upon the new forecast. That was under the assumption that the regional agencies would actually publish a new forecast. They used to do that in the February before the RTP cycle. So we expected by now to have projections 2017 in hand, start using it, start looking at it, start going through a local review process, and updating the land use based upon these new forecasts. Well, they're not available, and in speaking with ABAG staff, they probably won't be published for another year. So there's a delay in getting the numbers, just what is the forecast for 2040. Under CEQA law, and Mala, correct me if I'm saying anything wrong here, but my understanding is that when we release a notice of preparation for an environmental impact report, and we have already done that for this new document, we released a notice of preparation on February 14th, 2017, that as of that date, we should use the latest available information for our project, and in this case, our project is the countywide transportation plan. So staff has given you two options tonight. One option is let's redo the whole thing, let's take our time to do it, and let's wait until the information becomes available. And I can promise you that would not happen in calendar 2017. It would go well into 2018. The other option is to use what we have. We have adopted action plans from the RTPCs. We have projections 2013, which is the latest available regionally adopted forecast for households and jobs for the region. And we have the 2013 RTP, Regional Transportation Plan, which is the latest available regional plan on what's going to happen in transportation. So if we go to option 2, we could proceed at a very rapid pace using the information we have in hand, and we'd be able to get this done during calendar 2017, if not sooner. And so we took this to the Planning Committee. The Planning Committee recommended option 2. Let's use the information we have at hand. And we're here to just tell you about what they discussed at the Planning Committee and make sure that you're in agreement with that proposal. That concludes my report.
Questions? Go ahead. Newell?
No, I was going to comment that I think given the environment and with not quite knowing what we're going to see out of federal funding and things like that, I think it's crucial that we have a plan that is done and that we're poised, because this would be almost a checklist item. If our plan was in progress, it may not move us up far enough up the list. And the fact is there's a lot of discussion at some of the RTCPs, particularly in the South, that going to a different methodology could have a potentially a huge impact. And if it's going to take 2 years for the state to sort that out, we need to keep moving forward with the information we know and the methodology and see how that. From my seat, I think, I know PC talked about this, I think we ought to stick with the plan we have and move forward.
Commissioner Trotter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, I agree with the approach that you're proposing to do this right away. I have a question. Don't know who the question's for. Maybe it's for our CEQA lawyer. Suppose we get, 60% of the way doing it based on existing information, and then in the middle of that process, somebody lays a new study on us. Would that have to be accounted for?
No, as mentioned by Martin, because of when we filed the notice of preparation, we can move forward as is. We've kind of anticipated that concern because we've been waiting so long anyways for this information, but we would move forward as is. So even if it dropped much earlier than we anticipated, we could still move forward with this EIR and then in the future move forward with an amendment should you desire.
So we cut off the available information as of the date of the notice of preparation and can
Correct.
ignore subsequent updated information?
Well, we can amend later. We would suggest just moving forward with the data as the notice of preparation. So legally, we can do that, and we would suggest just moving forward because we've delayed the CTP process quite a bit.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor. My question is, what does that do to the numbers if the numbers aren't right? Well, you don't know that.
If I can, through the chair.
You know it as what you know
Go
it
ahead.
now.
Well, we love talking about numbers.
I figured you
That's what we do in the planning section. We love talking about numbers. And so we've been talking about numbers since projections 2011. So we had a number for housing growth back in projections 2011, and it was called current regional plans. It was everybody's dream for how much housing can we build by the year 2040. It's a pretty high number. And then the 2013 RTP came out, and they gave us a lower number for how much housing we could build. And then the 2017 draft numbers came out, and they gave us a much higher number. And the new 2017 number is settling back down kind of to where it was in 2013, pretty close. So the number keeps moving around. They are going to give us a new number, but we're working with the same time frame. We're working with 2010 to 2040. So these aren't dramatically different numbers, really. It's the same time frame. It's the same time horizon. And we don't have a right or wrong. We have the adopted forecast. And, you know, you could say that the forecast for 2009 was right, but it didn't account for the recession. At the time it was right, but then when the recession hit, it turned out to be way high. So a lot depends on what happens with the economy. We're talking about what's published, and we have a good published numbers for the 2013 RTP. It basically says that in Contra Costa, we're going to add about 90,000 new homes by the year 2040. And that would be the number we'd use. Now, if MTC comes out and says, no, you're not going to use 90, you're not going to get 90, you're going to get 100, or you're not going to get 90, you're going to get 80, it could change. And at a later time, we could go back and reevaluate that. But it takes a long time to work those new numbers in and start the process over again. So we'd probably do that on the next cycle. But it's not necessarily the wrong number. We'd use the published number.
So I guess what I would ask, okay, say at the middle of 2018, we're already adopted tonight, but all of a sudden the numbers are published, then you said, Molly, we can go back and adjust those numbers?
No,
I just need to be...
I think I'd recommend we continue on with the existing numbers in our EIR and then at a future date move forward with an amendment when appropriate. But I would...
For the next cycle.
Exactly. Or given some more time. But I think at this point we're recommending option 2 and using the current numbers we have.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yeah, I think Doyle's nailed it. We're sitting around trying to decide how we're going to do it, and we're not doing it. And if we don't do it tonight, we're not going to have it done by the end of the month or end of the year. And the reality is, we don't know if they're going to change anything anyway, Bob. I mean, this atmosphere is not conducive to waiting to see what happens. It's to lead rather than follow. And I think you've said it better, Newell, and I'll just leave it at that. That's the direction I believe we should take.
Mr. Roman?
Well, I'll just make a motion and we move forward with option number 2. I mean, it sounds like we have consensus as it is anyway, so I'll just go ahead and make that motion.
Okay, motion by Romick, second by Arnott, and I had a question. What's the downside of doing this? Or is there one?
It'll take less time and cost less money.
That's not a downside.
I know.
That's the only thing you can think of.
Okay. And then my second question is, I guess all of us got some letters from the Sierra Club, maybe some other people, and they were, I think this is what they're talking about, the notice of preparation for this, and I really couldn't understand what their issue was. Is that something we should be concerned about, or is that consistent with the direction you're going?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we did issue a notice of preparation on February 14th,
Right.
and comments are due by this Friday, March 18th. We're going to wait until we get all the comments together. We'll compile them, and we'll bring them to the Planning Committee in April to say, here are the comments we got on the notice of preparation. Those comments are to be taken into consideration as we develop the environmental impact report. And there are going to be concerns coming from all over the place in all different directions, and we will consider those as we develop the EIR.
Good, thank you. Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. And that brings us around to correspondence and communications. And any questions or comments on the materials that are in our packet? Hearing none, we move on to associated committee reports. Are there any? Hearing none, we move to commissioner and staff comments. What? The chair does not have a comment.
Chair's a good chair.
Commissioners' comments? Commissioner Hudson?
Yeah, briefly, I just got back from the APTA conference late last night, and one thing's really apparent. We are just way ahead of everyone. Some of these people are, well, we're ahead of everyone.
Just leave it at that.
The other thing I wanted to say is it's been a while since we asked for this, and good thing that Joel's here. I'm wondering if it isn't one of those times where we ask Bart to come out and do a presentation on how Highway 4 is going again, when you're laying the track, when you're going to put the station in Tracy to Stockton or Manteca or whatever.
We'll be happy to do that. Let's coordinate with, have the BART staff coordinate with CCTA staff, and we'll be happy to do that update. Thanks for asking.
Okay. Anyone else? Executive Director, comments?
Commissioners, I just wanted to kind of go back real quick to this March 6th announcement. We held an event out at Bishop Ranch for the second phase of the Easy Mile Shuttle program. The first phase was, as you know, testing at Gomentum Station. The second phase is rolling it out at the 110-acre parking lots around the roundhouse. And it was a big hit. The media loved this first and last mile solution. We have great partners in BART and others that are helping us support this. Bishop Ranch is a partner as well. And the media took it and went all over the United States with it. So that's great news. I think my whole report is based on innovation. The second item there, February 9th, we rolled out, I got a call from Carnegie Mellon spinoff called Roadbotics. What they're doing is they're using cell phone technology to map roads in jurisdictions throughout America. They're looking for pilot places to test their technology, and so they called us, and so, of course, we said we'd love to pilot it here in Contra Costa County. So we selected Pittsburgh because they're based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with an H. We're based here in Pittsburgh without the H. It's good. So Lindsay can spin this however she wants. So we're rolling it out there. They're going to take inventory as well as Oakley. And so if this works right, the cities will be able to get good information about conditions of roadway, vegetation, signs, where vegetation covers signs and things like that. And so we're excited about that pilot project. We also have on the second page here, PATH just turned 30, UC Berkeley at PATH, the Partners for Advanced Transit and Highways. I actually spoke at the 20th birthday. And so I suddenly realized how old I actually was when you're there and you speak at the 20th birthday and then you speak again at the 30th. I went to the Authority of Marin, TAM, our sister agency in Marin County, gave a speech about our innovation program here in Contra Costa County. And their board members asked, how come CCTA is so innovative? And I said, I've said this before, but it's because of the support we get from our board. You really, I can't understate this enough. The support that you give us allows us to do a lot of things that normal governmental agencies wouldn't try, and so staff really appreciates the support that we get from all of you. And then we went to Washington, D.C. I mentioned that last time, stormed Capitol Hill, and we're trying to get a $25 million approach language embedded into the next bill. The state of Michigan, their congressional delegation, has submitted a letter asking for $200 million. They did the same thing last year, got nothing. So I doubt if the U.S. government is going to place $200 million there, but maybe 25 in the way the language is structured for those that are testing. Many of the 10 test beds are not testing, they're gearing up to test. And Randy Carlton, the whole finance side of the house, we applied again, and I call it GFOA, but it's not really GFOA, it's Government Finance Officers Association, announced for the 5th year in a row. We got a platinum award, so we have the cleanest audits, clean audits, and the highest form of recognition in this area of governmental accounting and financing. So congratulations to Randy and Brian and everybody else in the finance department. Well, everybody at CCT, all the staff. So thank you very much for that. March 30th, we're going to host our 3rd annual Redefining Mobility Summit. I think we have a slate of great speakers. You should attend if you can. And that's all I have for you tonight, unless anybody has any questions.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yeah, not a question. I just forgot I'm supposed to give a report on that.
See, that's why.
Can I give a quick
On Washington?
32-second? Yeah. I would say that it was certainly one of the most active 2 days I've had back in Washington. I think we saw more people and more different committees in these 2 days for CCTA than I have in 5 trips back there. And it's getting to the point where you know people so well that we're like on first name basis. I was telling Randy with Vincent Valdez, and we talked to him twice, who has to do with innovation and research. Very, very interested in what we're doing out here. I think a couple names out of there we invited out to this March 30th summit, and they'll be out, including Uber. I thought that was a very productive meeting. I was very impressed, and I can't remember the names of these people. When we had a meeting at Department of Transportation, and NHTSA came into the room, and the temperature dropped about 10, 15 degrees, and we had support of the people from the Department of Transportation. I mean, people are getting this. But maybe the most impressive thing of all, I'm jumping to the meeting that Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock back there, and I'm listening to this congressman, what's his name, the one out of Oregon, Blumenauer. This guy gets it. This guy really, really gets it. And he's trying to tell APTA that, you got to start looking at first mile, last mile, all the alternatives, and give people options. And you've got people from APTA coming up calling it fantasy. And I go, well, that driverless shuttle I was on March 6th was not a fantasy. And go 3 loops before you realize there's nobody in there driving the thing. But this is, strange times back in Washington, D.C., but I think this is probably the most worthwhile trip I've ever made back there, and I'm hoping it just continues and just keeps sending Randy, our little rock star in Washington, D.C.
Okay, good report. Calendar, any changes to the upcoming calendar? Okay, so we adjourn to Wednesday, April 19th, 6 p.m.